Welcome once again to the Schaefer two-car garage and small engine repair shop. Today we're not going to fix anything, but we're going to do a review of my 2006 Cub Cadet LT 1045. I've had it for about 10 years. I'm the second owner. It's old and it has performed pretty well. So let's take a look at it. As you can see, this Cub has got the dreaded and much maligned Kohler 20 horsepower Courage single cylinder engine. Admittedly, not Kohler's best work. This is a bucket engine where the lower sump is all solid and the case comes off the top, and you have complete access to the inside of the engine. The top case of the engine is held on by a circle of bolts, and this engine tends to vibrate a lot and probably wasn't put together properly at the factory in Hattiesburg, but the bolts tended to loosen and rise up. They're all underneath the flywheel, and eventually they would start rubbing on the flywheel, and if they got loose enough they would stop the flywheel, and when they stopped the flywheel it tended to split the crankcase open, and that was the end of the Kohler engine. Now mine, I don't know whether it was worked on by the Cub Cadet dealer. This mower came from a dealer, not from a big box store, and the dealer may have been aware of the problem and may have taken those bolts out and put them back in with Loctite. I don't know that, but they were tight when I got them and they're tight now, and I've never had any type of problem with the engine. Now, there are about 1,000 negative reviews on the internet for people that have had problems with the engine, and I have friends that work at Kohler. I used to make all of the Kohler lubricants for them and got to know them pretty well, and they said admittedly this was not their best work. This engine is loud. It has a huge counterweight on it, and some of those counterweights tended to come loose, and when they came loose they'd go through the crankcase, end of engine. The counterweight was apparently very close to a design by Kawasaki, and Kawasaki took umbrage at it, got in a lawsuit with Kohler, which my understanding is Kawasaki won, and Kohler then had to either change the design or pay Kawasaki a royalty, which I'm sure was not a happy thing up in Wisconsin. I have done a few things to the engine, not very many, but I replaced the Kohler OEM oil filter with a larger filter. It's got probably 30% more filtering media in it. And you can get those at Walmart. You can get them at Advance Auto. You can get them at AutoZone. They all cross pretty easily with the Kohler filter number. I've kept the air filter clean in it, and over on the other side I'll show you a thing or two over there. I have done some work on the starter here. The bendings on this starter, of course, is driven up by centrifugal force, and it's got a metal plate that drives into a rubber part of the bendix, and those rubber parts of the bendix tend to wear out and slip. So I've taken the starter apart, and the first thing I did was spray the rubber part with this truck liner stuff that you get at Harbor Freight, and that worked fine for a while. It didn't last a whole lot of time, but it did temporarily solve the problem. I also have put in a pigtail here on the lights so I can take the hood off without having to take the lights out of their sockets. Cub Cadet should have done that themselves, but they elected not to. And I'll show you a few other things. You can see I bought this battery in February of 2017. It's now June of 2021, and it's still doing just fine. I keep it on a little Deltran battery tender junior all the time. So even during our non-mowing period, which here in Louisiana is about 10 days, it stays on the little charger. It's been a great battery. It's a Duracell, which I think was made by Johnson Controls. Now, there's a few other things that I'll show you. Well, number one, I put a pigtail directly to the battery, a little 2-outlet pigtail, so I can plug the mini Deltran in without even opening the hood. Another thing I've done is add this little voltmeter here, and I've turned the lights off here in the garage, and I'll crank it up and show you what it does. Well, you probably noticed two things there. First of all, when I started the motor, I was standing beside the mower and I was able to start it without sitting in the seat. That's because, like all of my equipment, I have disabled all the OSHA approved safety devices. I can start the mower, I can engage the deck, all while I'm standing by the mower we don't have any kids. I'm not afraid to try to run over anybody. We don't have any kids here at home, so it's okay with me. And the little voltmeter, which in my opinion is extremely valuable for any small engine, to see what the voltage, what your alternator is putting out, and what is actually going through the battery. This voltmeter is run by this little relay here that I bought on the internet. I connected the relay for power, I think, to the one of the hot switches or hot lines that goes into the switch. I think it was the starter trigger switch, starter trigger wire. That's the one I hooked it into. But this is just a little cheap relay that I bought off the internet, and it just does the job perfectly for supporting the little voltmeter. You also can notice that I have removed all of the pulley guards there, which in my opinion are nothing but traps for brush, sticks, and do nothing but make these spindles run hard. I've also taken off the brake. My yard's flat. This is a hydrostatic transmission, and when you let your foot off of the forward or back, it's going to stop immediately. So a brake is nothing but something looking for a place to brake. Mine has been removed. Now I'll show you something about these spindles. This Cub Cadet is, as I said, it's a 2006 model, and it was one of them that has 3 blades on it. The 2 outer blades are 1 length. The center blade is a little bit, maybe 3/4 of an inch shorter. And over the years, I had one of the spindles that didn't rotate as easily as the other ones did, and I fooled with it. It has tapered roller bearings in it, and tapered roller bearings plus grease fittings, so you could keep them greased, but one of the spindles just never did spin as easily as the other ones. So I found an online spindle from later models of Cub Cadet that have sealed ball bearings in them. The brand that I bought was 810, and that's the spindle that's closest to us here in the picture. Now, the 810 spindles are different from the Cub Cadet spindles. Here's the Cub spindle, and it's got a round bolt on it, where just squeezing is what holds the blade in place. This rolls kind of easy, but it's not like the other ones. The 810 spindle that I bought has got this star-shaped center bolt on it. So I had to buy new blades, which I didn't mind, and I've only put one of these spindles on. When the other 2 finally give up, I'll buy 2 more of these 810 spindles and put them on, but I'm not replacing something that's working okay. So they are what they are, and they're doing just fine right now. I did go into the spindles and do a little work on them. These early Cubs had like a 3.5 inch idler on the left hand side, and they had a tendency to throw the drive belt. So Cub issued what they called a pulley kit, which was like a 1/2 inch bigger idler and a 1/2 inch longer belt, and actually I think it was a 1/2 inch shorter belt, and that tended to solve the problem. The spindles on this deck, hear this helicopter out the back. Anyway, the spindles do not line up very well. Some are high, some are low, and they line up best when the deck is at the highest position. Now, down here in Louisiana, where I live, we mow at pretty high positions anyway, so I haven't had much of a problem with it throwing belts since then. The Cub Cadet wants you to start these things with the engine running wide open. I think that's ridiculous. More helicopters. So I start my deck with the engine barely at idle, and then bring it up to speed when I start cutting on it. Worked fine for me. One other thing that I've done recently is install what they call poor man's power steering on this unit. And that's a little sealed needle bearing that goes right down here where the weight of the axle and the weight of the mower, instead of just running on a smooth surface, it now runs on these little sealed needle bearings. And it did make a pretty good difference in the steering. This Cub has got a very tight steering radius, does a good job of mowing in confined quarters, and the little poor man's power steering setup didn't cost very much, and it has been an improvement. So overall, I'm very satisfied. You hear a lot of people dogging Cub Cadet. New Cub Cadets are junk compared to old Cub Cadets. Hey, that may be so. All I know is this one's been a pretty good unit for me. The engine has never had any issue at all. Hope it continues. I have run pretty much exclusively full synthetic oil in it, mostly Quaker State. They're full synthetic oil. I worked for Quaker State and Pennzoil Quaker State for a long time, and so their lubricants are first class, and I've just never had any reason to do anything other than run the Pennzoil branded products, or Shell branded products now. So that's the story on my Cub Cadet. Hope this video might help someone, and thanks for watching.